Hello everyone, welcome back to Career Launcher. And today I'm going to discuss sociology paper, and we'll discuss all the aspects. We'll go through the MCQs, and also I'll try to give you an insight over the subjective types of questions. So first we'll go through the MCQ part. As we know that there are certain 16 MCQs, and rest of the questions are subjective. So out of 35, you get 16 MCQs, and some are one question is based on table that is in the subjective one, which is 6 marker. And then there are different types of MCQs had been given this year. So that we will try to discuss. And this year, I have seen the level of the paper is quite tough as compared to 2024. This year's paper is little difficult. Why? Because it is moreover application based, and you have to spend some time on the MCQs before simplifying it. So I'll try to give you the answers or the answer key of the MCQs as well. So first question, that is assertion. In total this year, there were 6 assertion-based question, assertion reason-based question. So here this is question number 1, which says assertion is industrialization leads to greater equality, at least in some spheres, like caste distinctions do not matter anymore in trains, buses, etc. So this is the assertion statement where it is discussing the importance of industrialization and the impact of industrialization that has led to greater equality, and these discriminations, caste-based distinctions are not or doesn't matter, especially at the public places. Reason has been given that social inequalities are reducing in the world, right? So here, this is industrialization. Again, we can say it is a generalized statement. This statement is about the world where social inequalities are reducing. So reason is exactly correct that inequality is reducing in the world, right? But here the problem is that it is not directly related with the assertion statement. It is, we cannot say that reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So here question, the answer of this question will be B, that both the statements are correct, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. Next, we'll move on to the second assertion-based question. As I said, 6 assertion reason-based questions we have got this year. Assertion says old social movements function within the frame of political parties, right? For example, International Congress or Praja Party, or many more have been there. So old social movements that function within the frame of political parties. Reason says old social movements were national, right? So we cannot say that old social movements were national. It was religion-based as well. Remember, social religious reforms movement. So that was religion-based too. So we cannot say this, that it was only national. So here reason is not correct. So correct answer is C, that assertion is true, but reason is false. Next question is, as per the theory of demographic transition, which of the following statements are correct? So we need to know what is demographic transition theory. There was 3 stages of the demographic transition: first stage, second stage, and third stage. First stage, birth rate was high, death rate was high. Because of that, the difference between both was low. So low population growth was there. Second stage, birth rate was that started coming down, but still it was high. Death rate has steeped down, right? So here, the difference between these two was big. So population explosion condition could be seen in the second stage. Third stage, where birth rate has declined, death rate has declined. So difference between these two is small. So population growth is low. So now we know 3 stages have been there. With this, statement 4 is incorrect, right? Because here 4 stages have been given. Now we are left with 3 statements. Statement 1 says population growth is linked to overall levels of economic development. This is correct because the statement has been given in the transition theory paragraph. Then every society follows a typical pattern of development. This is also correct. What is the typical pattern? Increase in the birth and decrease in the death rate, or vice versa. Migration is also another pattern. So every society see the pattern. This is also correct. Then development is related to population growth. This is also correct. So here, all the 3 statements, 1, 2, and 3 is correct. So D is the correct answer. Next is another assertion reason-based question. So assertion says often it is thought that, where is the question? Yeah. So it is says that, yeah, often it is thought that imparting knowledge of scientific farming methods will improve the conditions of Indian farmers, right? So often it is thought, it means it is in the discussion or it is in the thought process that if scientific methods or farming methods will be implemented, that will improve the conditions of Indian farmers. And its example is Green Revolution, right? Reason says Indian farmers have been cultivating the land for centuries, much before the advent of Green Revolution. So here, this assertion is importance of scientific farming methods to be implemented, and reason says that the farming activities what people used to do before the implementation or before the introduction of Green Revolution. So again, both the statements are correct, but reason is not the correct explanation. So here B is the right answer. Now we'll move on to next question. Which of the following statement is related to tribal identity? Is not true. Tribal identity. So statement says assertions of tribal identity are on the rise. Correct. This is correct. This can be led at the door of the emergence of a middle class within the tribal society. So yes, among the tribal population, middle class is emerging. So they are getting more vocal about their rights and assertive their rights. Then issues relating to matters of ethnic cultural identity are becoming less important. Issues relating to control over vital economic resources like land and especially forest are on the rise. This is also correct. So here correct answer is C, which is not correct, which is not true in context of tribal identity. So C is the right answer. Next is case-based question, case study-based question. So one small paragraph had been given, and on that basis, you have to answer two questions. So first question is, just have a look on this. This is the general information about social inequality and exclusion, and this exactly given in the chapter. Question is, social inequality and exclusions are facts of life. This you have to apply your knowledge on, right, on this question. It is not given in the passage. It is not given. But here, this is based on your understanding over social inequality and exclusion topic. So it is fact of life. How it is fact of life? Statement says, this everydayness of social inequality and exclusion often makes them appear inevitable, almost natural. This is the treatment of the people, or we can say assertion of the people over caste-based inequalities or exclusion. So it appears that it is natural. This is correct. This is given as well. Then we often think of them as being deserved or justified in some sense, right? Then statement third says, these are natural, which can be changed. And this statement has been given that this is not natural. It is man-made. So this is incorrect. Statement 4 says the poor and marginalized are not blamed for their own plight, right? So they are not to be blamed. Why they are not to be blamed? Because this is not their problem, because this has been done by some other people. So here we have to answer in the context of social inequality and exclusions are facts of life that people have to face it. Why they have to face it? Because people made it appear natural and justified. So here statement 1 and 2 are correct. So A is the right answer. Next question is, which of the following statements is not true related to exclusion of Dalits? Not true. Statement A says institution of untouchability does not refer to the avoidance or prohibition of physical contact. Does not refer to. Then statement B says untouchability referred to a much broader set of social sanctions. This is correct statement. Untouchable caste are outside the caste hierarchy. Correct statement. They are, this is called punchable. They are considered to be so impure that their mere touch severely pollutes members of all the other castes. This is also correct. This is the meaning of untouchability. So correct answer is A here, which is not correct, which is not true statement. Next is assertion. The laws of a colonized country did not have to stick to the democratic norms that the British back home had to follow in Britain. So democratic principles, equality, freedom, that had been followed in Britain, but here when they came to India, they reintroduced this in the modern form. They did not follow it, right? Reason says the colonial administrators were clear that the harsh measures were taken against the laborers to make sure they benefited the planters. This is one of the aspects. This is one of the aspects of not implementing democratic norms, right? And this statement, both the statements had been given in the book. So here A is the right answer, that they had to benefit the planters, tea planters. So that is why they are not following the democratic norms which had been implementing in Britain. So A is the correct answer here. Next question number 9, based on case study. So again, just go through this passage. This passage is for the information, right? Is for the information that about what this question is going to be asked. So question number 9 says, which of the following statement is incorrect? We don't have to do anything to be born into a community. This is correct statement that this is not our choice to get birth in any particular community. No one has any choice about which family they are born into. This is also correct. No one has any choice about which country they are born into. These types of identities are acquired, right? So this is ascribed identity. So this statement is incorrect, statement D. Then community conflicts are hard to deal with because why community conflicts are difficult to deal with? Statement A says each side in the conflict thinks of the other side as a hated enemy. So two groups are in there. So group A thinks that group B is the enemy, B thinks A is the enemy. This happens. There is a tendency to exaggerate the virtues of one's own side. So people exaggerate their side. This is also correct. There is a tendency not to exaggerate the vices of the other side. This is innate, right? In this second statement. In such conflicts, they are constructing matching but reversed mirror images of each other. So here, statements 1, 2, and 4 is the correct one. So C is the right answer. Now, we'll move on to the next one. Why is the study of social movements important in sociology? Why it is important? Statement A says social movements were about protest which were perceived by elites as a major threat to the established order of society. So this is not true entirely. This is one of the aspects. Social movements were not seen as force that led to disorder. Participants of social movements do not have their own shared understanding of right and wrong. Participants did not often resort to public protest. So here correct answer is B, that social movements was not seen as forces that led to disorder. Rather, they tried to put society in order, and that is why social movements used to happen. So here, this is what the importance of the sociology, social movements in the sociology, that it was not seen as force that led to disorder. They tried to establish society in the order. So B is the correct answer. Question number 12, while urbanization has been occurring at a rapid pace, it is the biggest cities, the metropolises, that have been growing the fastest. Which of the following statements related to urbanization is not true? Again, it is application-based question. So the metros, these metros attracts migrants from rural areas as well as from the small towns, correct. The larger cities in India are not growing at such a rapid rate. Urban infrastructure can hardly keep pace. This is, this is incorrect statement. With the mass media's primary focus on these cities, the public face of India is becoming more and more urban than rural. It is also a correct statement. So here, the correct answer is C. That is urban infrastructure hardly keep pace, right? So it means it is not at the pace of would say increasing urbanization. So this statement is incorrect statement because urban infrastructure is improving a lot, right? And that is why it is attracting people from different cities. So here C is the right answer. Next is assertion. Agriculture is the single most important source of livelihood for the majority of rural population. So this is there because still 68% population is rural as per 2011 census. Then reason says rural is not just agriculture. Many activities that support agriculture and village life are also sources of livelihood. So here both the statements are correct, but reason is not the correct explanation. So B is the right answer. Next question is assertion reason again. There is an absorption of different tribal groups into caste Hindu society at varying levels of the hierarchy. This is one of the way the treatment of tribal, or we can say the inclusion of tribal population had been happened, that there is absorption of different tribal groups into caste Hindu society at varying level of the hierarchy. So as they have got their social status, they got assimilated in the society. Reason says tribal lands were colonized and forest had been cut down. So here both the statements are correct again, but reason is not the correct explanation because it is talking about displacement of the tribal population from their homeland because of colonization, exploitation of the natural resources, forest had been cut down. So tribal population had to be displaced. And then after that, in the modern time, debate had started that how these tribals should be treated, right? So statements are correct, but there is no correlation between these two. So B is the right answer. Next is which of the following statement is true for westernization? The changes brought about in Indian society and culture is a result of over 150 years of British rule. Westernization does not involve the imitation of external forms of culture. West did not influence Indian art and culture, literature. Westernization did not include the subculture of Indian intellectuals. Your correct answer is A, that the changes brought about in Indian society and culture is the result of 150 years of British rule. And because of that, Western thoughts had come. Western education, Western administrative system. So because of British rule, we got this westernization idea. So statement A is the right answer. Next is put the following statements in the correct order. So this is arrangement based MCQ. Workers have to work at the pace of machine. More mechanized industry gets, the fewer people are employed. Two tea breaks of 7.5 minutes each and one lunch break of half an hour. Workers get only 45 minutes rest in the entire day. So these statements have been given in your chapter number 5 of second book. So here, this starts from second statement that more mechanized an industry gets, fewer people are employed, but workers have to work at the pace of machines. So 2, 1, 4, 3. This is the correct answer. This is the correct arrangement. So A is the right answer. Now we'll move on to the 2 marks question. So first is, by and large, work for most Indians is still in small scale workplaces. Your personal relationships determine many aspects of work. In large organization, work is not determined by personal relationship, but inference. What inference? That is the conclusion. Can you draw from this statement? So here we can draw inference from the statement that in the large organizations, people are recruited on the basis of formal recruitment process. And what is the formal recruitment process? That is through advertisements, through proper, I would say, hiring drives, right? So your qualification matters, not your qualification matters, but not the personal relationship with the higher authority, right? So this is what the inference we can say. The next is cultural diversity can present tough challenges. Support the statement with suitable examples. Your cultural diversity, that is linguistic diversity, ethnicity, and so on. So you can talk about 2 types of cultural diversity and then give example. For example, Vishal Andhra movement, right? Then you can also talk about communalism or religious diversity. So communalism is the example that it can create a challenge. Then give one argument each for and against secularism. So what secularism is in the Indian context, that is respect to all the religion, right? So you have to give argument in the favor and in the against of it. So what is in the favor? That we are respecting all the religions equally. There is no particular religion of the nation. All the religious people or all the let's say people belongs to different religious groups. They are welcomed and they live peacefully. This is argument in favor. Against, that in the name of secularism, caste secularism, or we can say some of the religious groups are appeased, right, in the form of some social welfare measures, or particularly for them it has been made. So this is happening in the name of secularism, right? So this is the against statement. Next is Adivasis shared a common hatred for Dikkus. Why? Give 2 reasons. So why they share a common hatred for Dikkus? Because of land which belongs to them had been snatched by Dikkus. Dikkus are the let's say outsiders. That could be traders, that could be money lenders, that could be industrialists, right? So give 2 reasons: that their land has been snatched, that let's say their population had been displaced, right? And their employment had gone. So these are the reasons. Next is workers in underground mines face very dangerous conditions. Give examples. So what are the dangerous conditions in the underground mines? That is flooding, right? Or collapse of the roof. This you can write about. Give an advantage and what disadvantage of the policy of liberalization. So what advantage is what? That private sectors, they are welcomed to open up or set up their establishments, and it boosts employment, right? Disadvantage is that because of the opening up of the market in the name of liberalization, the indigenous industries, they have impacted a lot, right? So that you can write about. Then during 1960s, scholars debated whether tribes should be seen as one end of a continuum with the caste-based Hindu peasant society, or whether they are an altogether different kind of community. What is the basis for the argument for tribe and caste distinction? So basis is that the tribal population, they had their own myth, right? A niche where they used to live. And then after the during the colonial government, certain displacements had been taken place, their livelihood had gone. So now the problem had occurred that where they should be treated and how they should be treated, right? So you can talk about their livelihood issues, you can talk about their displacement issues. Next is many districts of colonial India were administered through the zamindari system. What problems were faced by peasants due to zamindari system? So they were forced to pay land revenue despite of failure of the crops, and they had to lose the land. These are the basic problems what they have faced. Next is one of the negative outcomes of Green Revolution strategy was the worsening of the regional inequalities. Give two reasons for your answers. So regional inequalities, there were certain regions which has been chosen for the implementation of Green Revolution because of availability of big lands and also availability of water, right? So that has been implemented. Then in some of the regions, people or the farmers are marginal or small, so they are not able to implement Green Revolution because it is very costly, right? Now, next question. The major epidemic disease in the past were fevers of various sorts, plague, smallpox, and cholera. But the single largest epidemic was the influenza epidemic of 1918-19, which killed about 5% of the total population of India at that time. Differentiate between epidemic and pandemic. Epidemic that comes suddenly and that takes life at large scale. Pandemic that would say that remains forever, right? So people or the body of the people that become used to of it, and there are proper, we can say preventive medicines later on, right? Next is theoretically, the caste can be understood as the combination of two sets of principles, right? Caste can be understood as a combination of two sets of principles, that is holism and hierarchy, right? And purity and pollution. So these are the two, holism and hierarchy, and purity and pollution, and that you have to define over here. Now, section C is 4-mark question. So again, just have a look onto it, what type of questions have been given. So from 1950s to 70s, a series of land reform laws were passed at the national level as well as in the state. What were the reasons behind these reforms? So between 1950s to 70 series of land reforms. So here we have to discuss about the reasons behind these reforms. So what is the reason? The first reason we can talk about, uneven distribution of land, right? Second reason, we can talk about that majority of the population was rural, so they were involved in the agriculture, and for that land distribution was important, right? Then we can also talk about the livelihood problem, right? So because literacy was low, and that is why job opportunities among the people was low. So livelihood emerged as the another problem. So that is how land reform was required, right? So these are interrelated points that you can write over here. Next is, in the 4-marker question, you have to write introduction. It is mandatory. So start with the introduction. Next is, sociologists use the term social stratification to refer to a system by which categories of people in a society are ranked in a hierarchy. How does social stratification persist over generation? So you have to describe this, how it is persisting over generation. But you have to start with the social stratification. So what is the stratification meaning? That is layering the population on the basis of caste. Right? So this is what the meaning of stratification. And how does it persist over generation? So it is persisting over generation that it is associated with the birth. It belongs to birth. It is associated with the occupation, particular occupation. They have to go through, they have to follow proper norms of food and sharing, right? Food and food sharing. Then there is a subdivision, right? Segmentation. So these points you can write. Next is, westernization does involve the imitation of external forms of culture. Illustrate the process of westernization. So imitation of external forms of culture that could be seen in the form of food, right? That Western food people have adopted. Then you can talk about clothing. You can talk about education. You can talk about household items, right? Like sofa sets, television sets, and so on. Right, so these are the process of Western imitation of the external forms of culture. Then next is, the varied social reform movements did have common themes, yet there were also significant differences discussed. So social reform movements had a common theme. What was the common theme? That was women's issue. That was inclusion issue, right? But there was a difference on the basis of religion. Every religions had different different background, and also their reason almost it was different, but still the demands were different, right? So reason was same, but the demands were different. For example, among the Islam, so in the Islam, women education had been fought for, but they wanted women to be educated inside the household only, right? So this way you can write an answer. Next is question number 29. Each one of us is born into a family, and most of us spend long years within it. Usually we feel very strong about our family. The family is an integral part of lives. Elaborate. So here you have to talk about the family, right? The family structure. Each one of us is born into a family, and most of us spend long years within it, right? And we feel very strong about our family. So family is the integral part of the life. So how you have to elaborate? You can elaborate that we would say at this point you can take that there is a sense of security, right? There is let's say what is to be called proper family norms, which is given to us being a let's say part of the society, and we grow up in let's say with that, right? And we continue or we give those norms to the next generation further, right? So family is the integral part of life that reflects in our values, that reflects in our virtues, right? So this way you can write about. Next is in India, the impact of very same British industrialization led to the deindustrialization in some sectors. So here you have to focus on the deindustrialize, where it has happened, and identify the impacts on the basis of above statement. So what was the impact? Impact was poverty. Impact was a loss of livelihood, right? Loss of livelihood. Impact of loss of cities as well, right? Manufacturing cities. And impact was another impact was burden on agriculture because of deindustrialization, right? So these 4 points you can write. Next is there is a close relationship between disability and poverty. Discuss. So what is the relationship between disability and poverty? That disabled people, they got less opportunity in education. They get less opportunity in employment, right? They are not treated equally, right? Then they have lack of facilities, right? So some of the points you can write over here. Then in response to harsh working conditions, some workers went on strike. Justified taking example of famous Bombay textile strike of 1982. So harsh working conditions, people went on strike. So you have to justify this Bombay textile strike. So you need to have information about Bombay textile strike of 1982 and what type of harsh working conditions, that proper mechanization, I would say machineries had not been maintained properly, right? And accidents used to happen, which has not been taken care of. Then apart from this, salary hike had not been there. Unions, they did not have proper rights to raise their voice. So here people chose to go on strike, right? So you have to justify with your points. Now, section D, which is 6 marker question, I told you in the beginning that there is a table. The table is on sex ratio. I would say declining sex ratio. It has been taken from, and this is between 1901 to 2011. Then child sex ratio had also been counted till 1961 and till 2011. So from 1961 from 2000, till 2011, there is a data of child sex ratio as well. Now see the questions. Question A says the subpart. What are the reasons for declining child sex ratio? So what are the reasons? Reasons are, would say, son preference, right? Reasons are misuse of technology, right? So people go for abortion in terms of sex after, I would say, after sex detection, right? Infanticide, that you can also write. The next is based on above data, compare the data of 20th century with that of 21st century and state your inference. Inference is your conclusion, right? So what is the data of 20th century? 20th century that begins with 1901. And this is the sex ratio of 1901 of all the age group, which is 972. And from 1901 till 2011, we have 943 sex ratio out of, among 1,000 population, right? But there is an increment. There is an increment. So from 1901 to 11, there was a decline in the sex ratio. 972 say, let's say we fell in on 964, right? But in 2011, there is an increment of 10 points. This is what we have to give our conclusion, that though initially this child, I would say the sex ratio was on its decline, right, in a decade. So from 1901, it was 972. In 11, it came on, there was a loss of 8 points, or we can say 8 points that we can say. So it was on the decline. So that was the time when we were under colonial government, right? And 1911, between 1911 and 1921, there was epidemic as well. So 5% population loss had been taken place, and in that, women also died. So again, 9 point ka loss we can say. So this reason you can give of influenza if you remember that. Then 1921 to 31, again, in decline had been there in the sex ratio, but this decline number was less, -5 compared to 1921. Then 1941, again, it remained -5. So there was a steady decline, right? Then in 1951, that was the year of census post-independence, I would say, independence. So there was an improvement in the sex ratio. So +1 improvement had been seen, and that was the time of progress, right? Why it was the time of progress? Because many people, men, women, children, they participated in the freedom struggle, between 41 to 51. So they participated in the freedom struggle. So somehow society was fighting for a cause. They were fighting for a cause. So these type of social evils had not impact a lot, right? So that is why somehow society was changing. So again, here that reflected in the sex ratio. But in 1961, again, we lost -5. Then 71, again, a huge number lost. It was -11. Then 81, we improved with 4 points. Then in 1991, again, -7 ka loss. Then 2001, +6 increased. And by 2011, it is +10 increment, right? So this is what we have to give our inference, that initially it was on the decline, but reasons you have to give, right? And then we are on the rise from 2011. So between 2001 to 11, there was a huge increment, right? Reasons you can give: education, awareness, right? So that you can write about. Next is, this we can leave. Next question is, discuss the classification of social movements. So what is the classification? Classification were 3: redemptive, reformist, and let's say revolutionary, right? So what was redemptive, revolutionary, and reformist? So these are the classification, right? So this you have to give, write with the examples, right? The next is, civil society has been instrumental in taking many significant initiatives. In the introduction, what civil society is, just give an introduction about this. The most recent being the campaign for right to information, discuss the initiative and its outcome. Then in the description, you have to write about right to information, that this is one of the fundamental rights under Article 19, right, which is giving citizens right to get informed about government decisions, right? And then you have to write about the initiative and also its outcome. So outcome is that now major decisions which government takes and the initiatives which they come up with, now people have, as a citizens, we have right to get information about this, right? 30 days window, it is there to get information on any of the topics, right? So just write about those. It is giving a tool in the hands of every citizen, especially among the poor, that they can get information about their welfare, right? So this is why it is a fundamental right. So moreover, subjective questions are still, it is, I would say, 2-marker, 4-marker, and 6-marker question are straight questions. But what they have done this year, they have tricked down the MCQ part. It is application based, multiple statement based. So that creates a confusion over here. But overall, it is moderate to difficult question paper, right, this year. So I hope it is helpful to you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care.